Afternoon. It is 8 minutes past 2. I'm Liz Green. It's the Big Yorkshire Phone-in. Now, I want you to meet a woman who's got it all, had it all. A high-flying media career. Astonishing. A loving husband. A 5-star lifestyle. But then one day, she realised she was unhappy and she felt empty. She was actually on holiday on the French Riviera, and she finally understood the things she'd spent her life striving for weren't really what she wanted at all. So she told her husband she had to go. She left her holiday and her husband there and then and began a new phase of her life. Crikey. What began then was a journey. And her book, just out, My Life in 37 Therapies, From Yoga to Hypnosis and Why Voodoo is Never the Answer, is out now. Welcome, Kay Hutchinson. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. It sounds really dramatic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds really brave. And then when I saw that voodoo's never the answer, I was really disappointed because it's always been like my backstop. Do you know that, oh, well, it'd be all right because you can just get a juju doll and it'll sort it. You're telling me it doesn't work?
Well, I'm sure for some people it does, but not for me. And I think at the time I did voodoo, I was really getting over this period of my life that was very disruptive and very difficult for everyone. So I think the sorts of things that I'd been trying during that phase were beginning to recede back, and actually I was beginning to rejoin the real world. So as I say, I'm sure there will be some people who do actually believe in it, but it didn't work for me.
Fair enough. At least I'm forewarned. This, I know we're having a laugh, and there is a lot of humour in what you've written and the experiences that you've had, but they are born out of a very personal time in your life, a very unhappy time in your life, and the book does chronicle what happened to you and how you actually coped with it. Am I right that the disquiet, which then turned into a major change, kind of began with the death of your mum?
I think looking back, yeah, I mean, at the time I didn't really know why I was so kind of lost. But I think looking back and doing all these therapies and actually thinking about it a little bit more, I realised that I hadn't really dealt with it at all. I just kept running around and sort of just trying to juggle all the balls in the air.
Now, there are loads of people listening now, and you've had the most spectacular career and still are, if I may say so, but listening now, who get to that point in life, for whatever reason, and feel lost, but don't have the wherewithal, the courage, the know-how to do something about it. What prompted you to do something about it?
I think it was sort of total meltdown because obviously I no longer had my husband, because I'd actually really had to get away to be on my own. But I was living on my own, and I didn't really want to tell anyone about this because it was so out of character, and it was such a huge change that I thought, really, I've got to start doing something for myself because, for a few months I tried to keep it all hidden away because I thought, oh, I'll get through this, I'll get over this, things will start to sort themselves out, but they didn't. And I spoke to friends about the things I could do. My GP, obviously I went to see my GP, and she was thinking, oh gosh, it might be your hormones, it might be something medically wrong with you, we should get you checked out, get tests done. But in the meantime, I was thinking, oh, I should go and, find something that would help me relax. So I did more yoga, which I found was quite helpful and calming. But it just wasn't enough. So I had some counselling. I started going to acupuncture. A friend had said to me, go and try acupuncture because it's really, really good for getting the energy flowing around your body when you're feeling a bit stuck. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but the idea of me being stuck, a lot of these alternative therapies are actually helpful in unblocking trapped energy or trapped, sort of conditions in your life and in your health. So it was really the beginning, and then over time I started to try all kinds of different things, and I began to get interested in them. So, the old me would never have done any of these things really. But this new version of me seemed to have discovered something that was of real interest, and I obviously needed to do something to help me move on and find some sort of sense of direction.
You're listening to Kay Hutchinson. Her book is called My Life in 37 Therapies, and that book's available. Is it out now or is it coming out? It's in July, isn't it?
It's coming out on Independence Day, which is quite funny, 4th of July.
Go.
And I know this is really cheeky, but my name is actually the Scottish spelling. It's Kay Hutchison, not Hutchinson. So if people are looking for it, there's just one N at the end here.
All right, I'm correcting that as I speak. My apologies. Now, I want you to take me back to being on that beach in the French Riviera and the light going off or going on in your head that life wasn't right. Now, you've had and are having a really great career. Just run through the jobs that you have done, and we'll talk about where you are now in a moment. But you were always wanted to work for the BBC, and you did.
Yes, I did 2 degrees in music and French at Glasgow University. And in order to make my chances of getting a job on the BBC better, I actually moved down to London. In the meantime, I got a job working for Decca Records in those days, which was a fantastic first job for me. And then I managed to get into the BBC, into radio, and relatively quickly after I'd done the training, BBC does fantastic training, I became a music producer for music programmes on the BBC World Service. After I had done that for a couple of years, I moved across to television. I got a job as a network director in Channel 4. I stayed there for 8 years doing lots of different jobs, working my way up, and then I was senior enough to be able to go for a job to launch the first Disney TV channel in UK. I went to do that, and then I was called to try and persuade me to go and do the same for Channel 5, which was launching shortly afterwards. Went over to Channel 5 and I was there for a number of years, and that was great doing the launch of that, all of the exciting things. It was such a new kind of TV channel. That was great. But to keep it short, I ended up working back at the BBC Broadcast, and I ended up being there at a time when it was a division of the BBC that was being set up for sale, and I was brought in to help the team, the staff, get themselves ready for the sale. So much more commercial and client focused, and less like the cosy BBC that it had been for many, many years. I absolutely loved working there. What fantastic people they were. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here, but that division of the BBC became Red Bee Media. It's since been sold to Ericsson, and it's now going back to its original name, Red Bee Media. But in the meantime, I ended up leaving, again, I think after about 8 years, to go and set up my own business.
Okay. We'll pick it up there, and we'll pick it up on the beach in the Riviera in a moment. Kay Hutchison, My Life in 37 Therapies, a media mogul, talking about changing your life in really the space of 37 therapies. Due out next month. It's part memoir, it's part self-help book. We've got Kay Hutchison here, who's been through it one way or the other and put this book together. And we heard about the career, which has been highly successful and still is. But it did change, didn't it, on a beach on the south of France? Tell me where you were that day in your mind as well as your body.
Well, it was actually, it wasn't the beach. It was actually at breakfast. And I don't know, I'd just been feeling really out of place, kind of not happy. I just really, really wanted to get away. And I think all of the things that we were doing, which were, we're a fantastic hotel, and, actually money was no object. We could buy things. We were going to the Formula One Grand Prix. We were really living it up. And it just all suddenly felt really empty. It's very hard for me to explain in a logical way, because I'm actually quite rational now, but I don't think I particularly was at the time. And I needed to get away and be on my own. That's the only way I can describe it.
And
Almost
that must have been
compelled.
alien. It must have been alien because your career has been, in major broadcasting organisations with huge jobs of responsibility. You're very self-confident. You had, I'm assuming, in control of budgets and people, and everyone would automatically think yourself and living it all with a husband and a nice salary and just getting on with it. And to actually have that realisation is one thing. To sort of get up from the breakfast table then and go, I'm off, is quite another.
I know. It kind of amazes me looking back as well, but I think it can only tell you about the strength of my feeling to need to change and get away. I felt terrible about my husband, because I mean, he hadn't done anything wrong. And I think what's wonderful is that he now realizes that it wasn't personal, it wasn't about him, it was about me changing. And at first when I said I'm going to go back home early, he started to go and find another flight. But I said, no, I'm going on my own, because he'd fixed up some other things at Nice, and I just couldn't go through it. We'd been doing this routine for about 10 years. So there's also something about this routine thing, about going through it and having things that seemed a bit empty. And going back to what you said about the death of my mother, I do think those things change you, because you start to think about what life is about and what's important in life.
Were you, and clearly I think you were, emotionally not in a good place, but financially in a good enough place to be able to walk away, to be able to go and embark on 37 therapies, and not deliberately cause harm to the people that you loved and who loved you, but you were enabled. If you were been sitting in a flat somewhere in the middle of Armley,
Yes.
or you couldn't have done it. You'd have just had to get on with it, wouldn't you? Do you feel that you were
Absolutely.
enabled really by all of that to do what you did?
I do actually. I think the other thing is that I didn't have any children. This was something that I was looking into when I was, well, I wasn't looking into it. It came up when I was, doing psychotherapy and talking to people about what had happened. Why did we not have children? I was just so keen to get on in my career. But I do think that I was just changing, and it kind of bubbled over. I think it was bubbling up, and that was the point at which I couldn't do it any longer. And I think I'm very lucky. Well, who knows if I'm lucky? I'm sure there'll be lots of people who will think, oh, well, you just had loads of money, so you just went away and had a great time. But it wasn't all good. It was really ups and downs like the rest of life, and it was only because I'd worked very, very hard that I was able to go and find a flat on my own and start again. And I do appreciate that's unusual.
I'm Liz Green. You are listening to Kay Hutchison. Her book, My Life in 37 Therapies, is due out in July. And you tried an awful lot of stuff. I know there are 37 of them. But we've talked about VooDoo. You've done silent therapy, music therapy, acupuncture, affirmations. And something I don't think I'm going to pronounce this properly. You'll put me right. Is it ayurvedic medicine?
Ayurvedic, well, I don't think it really matters. I think some people call it
What
that
is
as
it?
well.
What is that?
Well, it's based on an ancient Indian tradition or system of medicine, which is really about treating the whole person. I mean, the kinds of treatments that they have are mostly herbal, and about diet and about treating your mind, body, and soul. When I went to India, it was in Kerala with a group of Indian friends from my yoga class, and also from somewhere where I was getting some massage treatment as well. We arrived on the first day, and we had a team of doctors coming around asking us about our lifestyle, doing tests, looking at our tongue very closely, which I always thought was such a weird thing. You'd look at our tongue and, sort of nod and write something down on the clipboard. But by the end of that session, we all had a kind of a prescription for what things we needed to get our lives and our health back on track. So some people had sort of purging medicines. Other people had prescribed very strict diets. We all did yoga, and we had 3 hours of massage every single morning. It was very, very odd holiday, but it was fantastic. All the
Did you
things.
feel
So,
better? Did you feel better with all of that?
yes, I mean the
I know
people
I
on
would.
that trip floated off at the end of
I
it
know I
because it was, and it was such a beautiful place as well.
How did you choose what to do? Because there are so many therapies. I'll call them alternative, but I don't really like that phrase. I think it doesn't do justice to some of them. But did you have a hit list, a checklist, or did you just drift?
I think I drifted actually, and I think what happens is once people get to know that you're interested in these things or talking about them, they'll suggest things, or someone will know a really good reflexologist, which is the foot massage. Someone will sort of say, "Oh, you ought to try this, Kay," and I found that really one thing led to another. Sometimes a couple of them would be going at the same time. But it really wasn't a plan. I mean, none of this was a plan. And the book wasn't a plan either.
All right, we'll hear more in a minute, including some of the therapies that didn't work. Kay Hutchison, My Life in 37 Therapies. The book is out next month, and what we're talking about is the fix when life gets too much. It's not always a quick fix either.
Live across West Yorkshire.
BBC Radio Leeds.
If I say the words midlife crisis, if I say the words needing to go and find yourself, if I talk, and we often do, we have meditation hours regularly on the Big Yorkshire Phone-in, talk about ways in which you can steer your life to feel better. I'm not talking about quick fixes, but talking about self-help and learning new skills, and if you've got the burnout thing that's going on. Well, meet someone who's going through and been through all of that, has written about it. It's a book called My Life in 37 Therapies. Kay Hutchinson is here. And massive media mogul career, which is amazing. You were at breakfast in the south of France and left it and embarked on this journey. So many different therapies. What was the worst one out of the 37 that was never going to work and didn't?
I think okay. There's two really, which I don't know. For some reason, I think they're kind of related. But people will have heard of hydrotherapy or colonic irrigation. That didn't work for me.
Okay.
But the one which is probably more unusual is esoteric breast massage, which is exactly what you're thinking. A friend of mine who worked at Sky actually recommended it highly. She said, "Okay, you're really working in a very male-dominated, hard business area, and this therapy is absolutely fantastic for reconnecting you with your feminine side." And so I must admit, I just sort of, at that time I was trying everything, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I really am not, I haven't had kids, I really don't have that connection with my, because actually I had to be quite organized about work. I was quite strong person, and I think I sort of thought, oh yeah, she's probably right, so off I trotted. But do you know what? It just wasn't for me in the end. I had this really, really odd experience. I mean, it's only practiced on women by women, and I know that some people find it incredibly nurturing therapy. But for me, I just didn't want it. The only thing I'll ever do with that is check myself for lumps. But I really didn't want a therapy that was about massaging your breast.
So someone else did it?
Someone else did it. Yeah, and actually it's really, really funny because the therapist, who was absolutely lovely, and the room was really, really warm, and it starts like an ordinary massage, was telling me that actually it was something that was beginning to really take on in lots of different countries, as a way of doing relaxation in surgical procedures where everyone, listens to music, relaxes. So all of this idea of surgical cutting and it being quite a barbaric thing, they're trying to soften it by relaxing everybody and having breathing in sync and all the rest of it. But it just sounded too weird to me.
It all sounds so Ab Fab to me.
It really is, yes.
Come over here and let me do this. I mean, hey, if it works for someone, I think that's amazing.
Absolutely.
But clearly you were undaunted in trying anything. What really worked for you, Kay? What really worked?
I think the one that always stands out to me is the silent therapy, which is really quite a surprising thing, because whenever I told anyone about it, they were all laughing and gee-hawing and just sort of thought this was absolutely amazing. I went to a silent retreat for 10 days over Christmas one year, and I just loved the idea of getting away and just being quiet over and missing the whole. You don't speak. You're not. It's such an odd thing because there were 50 of us, all women, in this sort of hall. Actually, it turned out to be a kids' outdoor activity centre, which was a real letdown for me because I thought it was going to be something really kind of mystical and interesting and exotic. And we turned up, and it was a kids' outdoor activity centre that had been kind of revamped for this silent retreat. And we were staying 6 of us to a dorm in bunk beds, sharing one bathroom. We were up at 4 in the morning.
Are you mad?
Yes, it does sound. When I describe it now, I sort of think, how did I do that? But actually, I tell you, although it sounds awful, and I did sit there on Christmas, sort of with dinner, which was an orange and an apple, and I sort of thought, but I actually feel really, really good. It clears out a lot of the clutter in your mind. And the other thing is, it forces you, because much of the day was meditation, which is at the end of the day really about sitting quietly and calming your mind. It really helps you to take things easier. I was eating more slowly, digesting really healthy vegetarian vegetables or fruit. I was sitting quietly for 10 to 11 hours a day. We did get out occasionally to go for a little walk around. There's a patch of grass, and we weren't even allowed to look at each other because you're not supposed to encourage communication of any type. Right. But I tell you, when I left, I really wasn't that bothered about speaking. I really felt calm, and I felt as if I was a bit clearer about what I was going to do next.
Where are you now in your life, Kay?
I would say in a much better place. I mean, life's so full of surprises. You never know what's around the corner. But I set up my own little publishing company. Well, I set up my own company, which eventually developed into a publishing company because I ended up working on publishing my father's life story, and enjoyed that so much that we thought, oh, actually, I really like being in this would be a great thing to do. So publishing started, and then I began to think I would quite like to talk about the story of my meltdown, because I was just finding lots of people were saying, oh yes, I know about that, or oh that I can relate to that, or yes, I've done a bit of that. I haven't told anyone about it, but I have actually done that myself. And I thought it would be useful to put it into the context of what I learned in my life, and to show that someone that is so kind of stable and settled and happy, it can all go wrong, but there is a way out. And just for me, the way of getting out was actually through going through all of these different experiences.
And it went wrong, but is life right now for you?
I think it does. It feels good now. I feel much more settled, and I'm more relaxed. I'm not running around the world doing things. My working life is busy, but it's really enjoyable. We publish books now for children, for sort of conservation books about wildlife conservation for tigers. And I think that's really fulfilling because it comes out of I mean, I've had a lifelong interest in wildlife and nature conservation, and it's wonderful to see this in stories. The author, R.D. Dijkstra, he is really fantastic at putting some of the ideas of serious conservation things down, but in a way that's really palatable and fun for kids.
All right, you said you were lost. Congratulations on all that's been achieved since then. Would you say, in terms of being found now, what, you're 100% there, 80% there?
I think I'm probably. I think I'll never. No one's ever more than 80%, but I'm really getting there. I would say 80%. Really, I've got absolutely nothing to complain about.
Good to talk to you. Thank you for your time and good luck with
Thank
the book.
you.
Thank you, Kay
Thank you,
Hutchison.
Liz.
Bye. My Life in 37 Therapies, published in July.